Decades ago, I started growing food in my front and backyard, and I realized that my mission in life is to inspire and empower others to grow their own nutrient-dense, healthy organic food. Because of this, a lot of people have come to me with their gardening questions over the years, and that got me thinking, what if we put together a community that would help budding gardeners blossom? So I finally made the idea a reality with my Urban Farm U member program. Each month, your membership includes 3 live online events, a monthly class, a chit-chat with an expert, and a monthly coaching session, plus access to the experts on our member page and a significant discount on our signature courses. I'm deeply committed to transforming our global food system, and I do this by empowering you to grow your own food. The Urban Farm membership program is a simple way to get going. Please join me in transforming your food system today. To learn more, go to urbanfarmmembership.org or text membership to 33444. That's urbanfarmmembership.org or text membership to 33444.
You're listening to the Urban Farm Podcast, your partner in the Grow Your Own Food revolution. Whether you've just been introduced to urban farming or you're a lifelong advocate, we're sure you'll leave feeling more informed, equipped, and empowered to dig deeper into the soil of your local food economy. With you every step of the way, here's your host, Greg Peterson.
Today on the Urban Farm Podcast, we have Master Gardener Missy Gable to talk about her experience with understanding climate zones. Missy serves as a director for the UC California Master Gardener Program and co-director for the UC Master Food Preserver Program, both statewide programs under University of California's Division of Agriculture and Natural Resources. Missy earned her BS in Biological Sciences and MS in Horticulture and Agronomy from UC Davis. She enjoys sharing her passion for home horticulture, sustainable landscaping, and home food preservation with the 6,500 plus UC Master Gardener and Food Preserver volunteers and program staff across California. She loves the direct impacts both programs make in local communities, including teaching about growing and preserving food, reducing food and water waste, improving pollinator habitats, beautifying landscapes, and so much more. Welcome to the show today, Missy.
Thank you so much, Greg. I'm glad to be here today.
Absolutely. So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get where you're at now?
Goodness. Well, I certainly had a fun time getting to where I am today. You had mentioned I went to UC Davis. I'm an alumni of Davis, both for my undergraduate and my graduate degree.
Yay.
I started out at Davis thinking that I was going to go into medicine and realized just before graduating that I am not a fan of sick people. Rather, I would much prefer time in the garden. Mm-hmm. It kind of was an epiphany. I'd rather travel the nation looking at botanical gardens and arboreta than head to medical school. So I quickly changed my tune.
Yay.
I feel fortunate. Got my master's in environmental horticulture and really got hooked in with horticulture and the agricultural community in the state of California. Mm-hmm. And developed my skills in horticulture and leadership also in leadership, and was really fortunate to land a position working with who I think are the most phenomenal gardeners in our state, the UC Master Gardener volunteers.
Nice. So for those listeners that don't know what the Master Gardening Program is, can you tell us that? Because it's an incredible program.
It is an incredible program, and I would love to tell you about us. So we are a statewide program, as you mentioned, under the auspices of the UC Division of Agriculture and Natural Resources. Mm-hmm. And our statewide program, what we do, people who are interested in gardening, they may not have any background in gardening whatsoever, but they have an interest. They come to us, the University of California, and they get trained to be a UC Master Gardener. It's a really intensive training, most of the time 50 to 60 hours in classroom. After a volunteer has gone through their training period, they do take an exam to become certified so that we know that they are well aware of all of the great resources that the university has and other accredited institutions to help us all be successful gardeners. And then those volunteers, once they're certified, they give back to the program. They give back volunteer time.
Nice.
And they go out into the community and they give people research-based information on how to be better gardeners. And what's great about that is that we are providing a service that's typically free or at a very reduced cost, and we are making people more successful and more sustainable in their home landscapes. And they're also getting the best of the best information. Research-based information is what we all really need to fall back on, so that we can be informed and be just very smart about the decisions we're making in our landscapes.
Perfect. Now, this isn't just a California thing, is it?
No, it's not. It's a national program. It is offered through land grant institutions. So there are land grant institutions all over the nation. And the Master Gardener program is usually facilitated through cooperative extension. So here in California, the parent of cooperative extension is the Division of Ag and Natural Resources at the University of California. And then we have cooperative extension offices in all the counties in the state of California. Yes.
I would suspect, you probably know better than I do, but I would suspect that every county in the United States has their own extension office, right?
You know, unfortunately, that's not the case. There's one state over on the East Coast that did cut all of their funding to their extension programming. So they don't offer that. So it is not nationwide, but it is close to nationwide.
Close to nationwide, yeah. Cool.
Yes.
I know we have it here in the state of Arizona. So
yes, you do. You guys have a very strong program in the state of Arizona.
Yes, we do. So, and in your bio, there was one other thing that I'm really curious about that I've never heard of, and I've got to know about it. And this is the UC Master Food Preserver Program. I want to take that. We don't have that here in Arizona. I want to take it.
You know what? The UC Master Food Preserver Program is a really exciting program. It has been around for about the same amount of time as the Master Gardener program, so since the early 80s in California, but it only recently became a statewide program underneath the Division of Ag and Natural Resources. And so we're putting a lot of energy into the Master Food Preserver program right now. It is not as widely available in California as the Master Gardener program. The Master Gardener program, we have 51 programs, and the Master Food Preserver program has 13 right now. And so we're continuing to build up that momentum. But the food preservers, it's essentially the same thing. They're coming to the university and getting trained by university experts on food safety, on food handling, and the safe methods for home food preservation. So those would include drying or dehydrating your foods, pickling, water bath canning, pressure canning, and freezing.
Nice. So is this something, if we wanted to start here in Arizona, there would be some content for us?
If you wanted to start in Arizona, you just get someone to contact me. We would send over our content and show you what we're doing. The University of Washington Washington State also has a very robust program. Colorado has a program. So it is speckled throughout the nation.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, just slightly less widespread than the Master Gardener program at this time.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for that. But today we're going to be talking about understanding climate zones. So we have our USDA hardiness zones.
Yes.
Right? What are those?
That's a great question. So the USDA plant hardiness map actually divides the U.S. into 11 zones, and those zones are based on, I believe it's the 30-year average for high and low temperature.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the USDA hardiness zone it's a great resource. It is used nationally. So on many plant labels, what you're going to see is a USDA hardiness zone.
Yep.
Also, if you're purchasing seeds online, you're going to want to pay attention to which climate zone map you're reading about.
Okay.
Whether the organization that you're purchasing from online is listing the USDA hardiness zone,
Right.
or in the West Coast here, we have the sunset zone map. So we have two different zone maps, and it certainly can be confusing if you live in a Western state as to which one you're looking at when you're purchasing plants. And it's pretty critical that gardeners and farmers are aware of what zone map they're looking at when they're making plant decisions.
Right. So what's the difference between them?
Sure. So, as I had mentioned, the USDA hardiness map is based on an average high and low temperature over, I believe it's a 30-year period.
Mm-hmm.
And then the sunset zone map it's actually much more specific, and it takes into account other factors that influence whether or not a plant can grow in your area. So in addition to temperature, just like USDA, it does take into account temperature. It also takes into account rainfall patterns, such as how much rainfall and when that rainfall comes, the length of the growing season, and even humidity. So it really dives into much more specificity as you're looking at the different areas. It has 24 zones in the sunset zone map.
So it sounds to me like then the sunset map is a little bit more detailed. Does I get that right?
It is more detailed. Yes, it is. So my preference is always to look at the sunset zone map because it just drills down into more specifics about your area.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you kind of touched on this. So are these climate zones synonymous with weather?
It's a great question, and this can be confusing to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Weather is actually measured over a short period of time. So weather happens daily or even in an afternoon, whereas climate happens over a longer period of time. So we might have. Yeah, we might have a rainy day in the spring, but generally our spring climate could actually be dry. So it's a measure of time. Weather is that specific atmospheric conditions over a short period of time, and climate is that longer period of time, either over a season or maybe annual climate. You can look at that over, as I had mentioned, a longer period of time.
You know, one of the reasons, so we're at about episode 120 with the Urban Farm Podcast, which I'm really excited about. And one of the reasons I do this is to learn new stuff. You know, I've been studying this stuff for over 40 years, and it's so fun for me when I learn that there's a difference between climate and weather. I just never knew that.
You know, I think gardeners in general are consummate learners. Gardeners love getting new information. We love trying new things. And so I share that enthusiasm with you.
Yeah. So what factors create climate zones and consequently the biomes that they represent? So you're going to have to, let's talk about biomes first. Let's pull that apart. What is a biome?
Okay, so what is a biome? A biome is a climate type and the animals and plants, the flora and fauna that live within that climate type.
Great. So we're in the Sonoran Desert, so that's a biome.
Absolutely,
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. And so these factors that create these climate zones, what are they?
Well, factors that create climate zones, like we had mentioned with the sunset zones, the factors that go into determining where sunset zones are delineated within a state, it's temperature, it's the amount of rain, how much you get and when you get it, humidity, length of the growing season. All of those are factors that play into what climate zone a person is in, or an area of the country, or even an entire continent can be part of a climate zone.
Right.
And then the animals and the plants that have adapted to live within those climatic conditions.
Got it. So and that's how the biomes plug into all of this.
Yes, that's correct.
Perfect. And there's a term. So I study permaculture. You're familiar with permaculture?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I like to call permaculture the art and science of working with nature. How do we plug in and work in with the flow of nature? And
I like that.
Thank you. And there's something that we talk a lot about in permaculture. They're called microclimates. So what are microclimates and why are they important?
Microclimates are so important for gardeners. So in general, we have a climate that we live in, but there can be small areas within our climate, like little pockets, little areas that have a different type of climate. We call that a microclimate. And a microclimate can develop for a number of different reasons. On a large scale, perhaps there's a microclimate that is at the base of a valley surrounded by a big mountain range. And in that microclimate, it's probably going to be colder in that valley than it is elsewhere because we know heat rises.
Right.
So it's going to be cooler in that area, and that may influence the types of vegetation that can survive in that area. Thinking about myself, I live in an urban area,
Right.
and I have microclimates just in my own backyard, right up next to my stucco home, especially on the south side of my home. It absorbs a tremendous amount of heat. It's really a heat island, and I can grow much more successfully some of my tender plants against that concrete area.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
In the wintertime.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So other things that affect microclimates are bodies of water.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So we think about California. There are areas along the coast. Right along the coast probably has a little bit different microclimate than just slightly inland because you're going to have salt splash and you're going to have more water in the air. So you can think about microclimates, like I had mentioned, just in your own backyard, in your community, and maybe just in general in your city. Are there areas in your city that have slightly different climates than the larger overall climate?
Yeah. I have a west-facing wall here at the urban farm. It's a really warm microclimate, and I grow things differently there than I do in the front yard, which is an east-facing and gets afternoon sun. So that's kind of how I utilize it.
Absolutely. Great way to utilize your microclimate.
Yeah. So why is knowing your climate zone so important when you're selecting plants and seeds and the like?
When we don't know our climate zone, or perhaps when we want to ignore our climate zone, I call that zone denial.
Oh, that's good.
We have a tendency to go out and purchase plants and subsequently put them in our landscapes that really are going to have a hard time surviving and thriving. And so what happens is that a gardener puts a lot more resources into those plants than they otherwise would, in an attempt, maybe they're fertilizing them extra, or they are just mulching them more, they're watering them more, they're just kind of tending to them and trying to get them going. And sometimes those plants can survive, and sometimes they don't make it. And so now you've just invested a lot of resources into a plant that ultimately has not been successful for you. Yeah. So knowing your climate can help you save time, save money, water, and other important resources.
Yeah. I call those the advanced plants.
Yeah, the advanced plants. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I have been at the mercy of zone denial many times in my life.
Yep.
And I'm sure I will be at the mercy of it many more times.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating. I've, invested in a plant that I've always wanted to try, and it's not made it. And then all of a sudden your $20 is in the compost pile, and all that time you took and the water that you put on that plant, it can be pretty frustrating for a gardener. So to help people to be sustainable and happy gardeners, we definitely want to educate folks on what climate zone that they're in.
Yeah. I tell people that growing food is one great big grand experiment. So I actually encourage people into zone denial if they want to try something, And the other
growing food. I think growing food can, for me, sometimes fall into a little bit of a different category. Definitely with ornamentals, I found myself being particularly upset when I try something more tender than I really should try, and am not successful. Whereas my food plants, I tend to, in all honesty, pamper them a little bit more than the rest of my landscape.
Of course we
And
do.
so I would agree with you that maybe when you're producing food, that's really the time where you can experiment and try some different things.
Yeah, and I'm a big encourager of figuring out what can grow in your space, because everybody's yard has different microclimates. So if you go explore a plant, and actually I should just ask you this next question here. Is it ever possible to be successful with plants that are not assigned to your climate zone?
It really is, and you were just about to touch on it there, microclimates. You could have a special little area in your landscape that has its own microclimate that will let you be successful with a plant that maybe is more tender than is recommended for your climate zone.
Yeah. What have you played with successfully and maybe not so successfully in that arena?
Oh, well, I have lived in the Sacramento area for quite some time now, and there's actually a really big difference between the city of Davis and the city of Sacramento. We have different types of water. And there's just a little slightly different climate, slightly different microclimates in each area. And so when I was living in Davis, I tried, I guess my best example is a really tender abutilon, flowering maple. In some areas, abutilon they're fuss-free plants. They're really easy to take care of. They can survive and thrive on low water, but it just so happened that the cultivar that I had chosen was particularly tender and just was unhappy in Davis. It did not like the water. It did not like the sun. It was just too hot, and that poor little plant, as much as I tended to it and loved it and cared for it, it did not make it.
Just did not want to do it. Yeah.
It did not. But I've also tried things that I've been really successful with. I've really gotten into some of the unique types of citrus that you can find now.
Oh yeah.
And there's some great stuff out there. Australian finger limes are one of my new favorites.
Oh yeah.
Oh, if you've never tried them, they are spectacular.
I haven't. What are they?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, definitely do a little Google search because it does not look like a traditional lime. The fruit is, it looks like a finger. It's a kind of a long, skinny piece of fruit. And you slice it lengthwise in half and open it up, and it's full of these little pearls of lime goodness. And you kind of scoop them out with, I just scoop them out with a spoon, and then they're great on grilled chicken, grilled fish. I put them in my salads. They are just these fabulous little flavor bursts that kind of pop in your mouth. Very exciting. I was going to say, I'm getting away from myself. I've been successful with some of these interesting, different citrus by paying attention to the microclimate in my backyard now. And so I've got my citrus up against a stucco wall. It's the wall of my home. And they get some more radiant heat in the wintertime. And that has really helped all of my citrus to keep going. I did try at one point for aesthetic reasons. I moved a couple of prized, fabulous citrus plants. They were in large containers, and I moved them out into another part of the landscape for aesthetic reasons, and they quickly told me that they were not happy with the change. Nope, not happy. So I have learned to pay attention to my microclimate and be more successful by knowing my plants' needs and what I can provide for them in my landscape.
And sometimes you have to experiment with this, right?
Absolutely. My goodness. Yes. There's a lot of experimentation that happens with gardening.
Yeah. So all of you listeners out there, this is your permission. You grant them permission too, Missy.
I do. I grant people permission to have fun and experiment. That's part of what gardening is about.
Absolutely. Because that's how we find out what really, really can grow in our space.
Yep. Use the climate zones. Use your sunset zone if you're in the West Coast as a guide. And then get out there and get your hands in the soil and figure out what you can accomplish.
Nice. So I'm going to shift on you a little bit, and I'd like for you to talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you might have learned from it.
A time I failed in my garden.
Yeah.
This is it's part success and part failure. But
Perfect.
A time I failed was, it was one of the first times that I had money to buy something out of a seed catalog.
Oh.
So I was out of graduate school and had started working, and for the first time I was not scrounging for free seeds from my friends. I decided I'm going to get a seed catalog and I'm going to order something, and I went nuts.
Of course we did.
And of course I did. And a prime example of that, I planted 8 different varieties of zucchini.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, really smart. And I knew better.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, I was just compelled to do this. And I did realize, as much as I've always given people advice, only plant and grow what you and your family will eat. I had not listened to my own advice. And I figured, well, goodness, I can handle 8 varieties of zucchini. It turns out there is in fact a limit to how much zucchini you can eat in one season and the different ways that you can preserve it. I found that limit for myself, and really what I learned from that, I do call it one of my failures, because I had not really considered the impact of what I was doing. I overplanted, and I had a fun time looking at the different varieties of zucchini, but was it really worth it to put all of that water and all of those resources into my garden, produce all of that zucchini, and then ultimately I was begging people to take it off my hands. And
I was going to ask you that. I was going to say, were the neighbors hiding when you came knocking?
They start to see you coming after a while, and they did start to see me coming. And so I really learned that in that case it was a failure, and I need to be smart about my resources. I need to be smart about, I shouldn't say my resources, my garden resources, garden space, the sunlight that I have, the amount of water that I want to put on my plants. And so I want to be a more sustainable gardener. In that case, it was a failure because I wasn't looking at the heralds of being a sustainable gardener, and I was ignoring them so that I could have fun and look at different zucchini varieties.
Well, that's how we learn, right?
Right.
So looking back at that, what would you do differently if you wanted to see all 8 varieties?
Pick 1 or 2 for each season or each year, and grow them out and enjoy them. Enjoy that 1 or 2 different types of varieties each year, and just try them. One after another, and enjoy it that way. I really think I could have gotten more pleasure out of those plants and the produce that they gave me if I had done it that way. After a while, it was just zucchini.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you consider your biggest success?
My biggest success in my garden, I would say I just experienced this one recently. I have been producing my own fruits and vegetables for a long time. I have a great time doing it. But this year was really special because I have 3 thornless blackberries in the backyard. My husband and I have very much enjoyed the fruit, but my 2-year-old daughter this year really got the hang of it.
Nice.
And so I would say my biggest success in the landscape was watching her enthusiasm every night, going out, checking the plant, eating the berries. I will say now she asks almost nightly if she can go outside and get some blackberries, which of course we don't have right now.
Right.
It's the season is done for us. So that was a sad loss for her, but it really was a success for me to see her get excited about it and want to go outside and check her vines. Yeah.
Beautiful. We recently interviewed a young lady named Ping from the American Horticulture Society on getting kids to garden, and that it's what I've found over and over and over again is that if we can get them growing it, they'll eat it no matter what it is.
I agree with that. Now, that did not work for me this year with tomatoes, but I'm going to keep trying.
Try it again. It'll work.
I will. I'm going to keep trying. Yep. I'm going to go for a pink tomato next year. I think that is maybe going to do it. Yep.
So I'm going to actually ask you this question again in a little bit different way, and that's, what do you consider your biggest success in the Master Gardener program? Because I believe that the Master Gardening program is one of the most incredible gardening gateway entry places for people. And I'd like to know the answer to that question. going to put you on
I
the spot
would
here.
love to answer that for you. I would say my biggest success with the Master Gardener program, we have a really talented community of practice. So at the statewide office, we've got a woman who excels in marketing. We've got a training coordinator. At the local level, the county offices, we have just stellar coordinators who are educators. They love working with the volunteers. And then I can't say enough about the volunteers that we have. And really, I'd say my biggest success is it's been working the last couple of years to increase the awareness specifically of the UC Master Gardener program within the state of California. This is a phenomenal resource that people can tap into. It's a way that they can save water in their landscape. It's a way they can get information to be more successful when they're outside gardening, it's huge, right? The more they're outside gardening, the healthier they are, the better they're going to feel. So really, to me, my biggest success is when someone asks me what I do and their eyes light up when I say UC Master Gardener program, and there's that recognition. So my biggest success is really just getting the word out about the program, because we have, like you said, it's the best resource out there, and it's such a pleasure to work with the volunteers who are out giving research-based information. All I want is for people to know about them and know where to find them.
Yeah, perfect. So you're in California, and right now California has a significant drought going on. How has that impacted your gardening and the program that you're teaching in the state?
Sure. Well, in terms of my personal gardening, the drought has really it made me give even more consideration than normal to what I was putting in my landscape, any changes I was making to my landscape. So I have not made any changes to my ornamental plants recently, because ornamental plants have an establishment phase where they require more water than they will later on. So I have not changed anything about the ornamentals in my landscape. And when it came to my home garden, I spent a lot more time than I always spend time giving consideration to what I want to grow. I spent even more time this year and gave more consideration to the amount of time I had and what I could grow the biggest bang for my buck. So in 1 square foot, what's the plant I want to put in that space and water that's going to give me the most produce that I can get. So I really, I focused a lot more on what we were going to use. I have a young family, so I went with cherry tomatoes this year instead of any beefsteaks. And, I changed up the type of eggplant that I was growing to reduce waste and maximize the usefulness of the product for the water and the time that I was going to spend growing it.
Right. Beautiful. And in the program itself?
The program itself, my goodness, we've been doing a lot of education about the drought. It's scary here, I have to be honest. People want desperately to be responsive. And so what we've seen, a lot of people just went out and they turned off the irrigation to their lawn completely. And, okay, you've turned off the irrigation to your lawn. If we ever come out of this drought, lawns can be reestablished, or you can put in something different.
Right.
What is harder to reestablish is the trees that are oftentimes planted in the lawn. So, folks are not remembering, when we turn off our lawn irrigation, those trees planted in the lawn have adapted to this kind of shallow, frequent type of irrigation that they get from the lawn sprinklers, and suddenly they're not getting that anymore, and they're really suffering. And so we're seeing a lot of decline in the trees, and if the drought isn't taking them, this lack of water that they're receiving, they're becoming more susceptible to pests and diseases, and because of the drought. And so that's we've really been working on focusing our educational messages and how people can be responsive right away in your landscape, but how they can be responsive in a really smart way, so that they're taking care and prioritizing the plants that are really going to be hard to reestablish someday.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, because here we're in Arizona. We don't have a drought, although we should probably be under drought conditions. We're not there. And just in you sharing that had me start to rethink how and what I'm going to plant this fall.
Sure, yeah.
So thank you for that. Yay.
Well, good.
You bet. So what drives you?
What drives me? I touched on it when I touched about the successes, what success with the Master Gardener program has been really meaningful to me. What drives me in my work with the Master Gardener program is that I really, everyone says they want to make a difference, and everyone has the capacity to make a difference. I really feel fortunate that, with over 6,000 volunteers in the state making over 1 million face-to-face contacts every year, we have a real opportunity to make a difference with the Master Gardener program, a difference in California.
Yeah.
And so what drives me is, I'm very grateful to be working with volunteers who are on the ground and so passionate about communicating with people. And what drives me is making sure that we are reaching a really diverse audience in the state of California. People who live in apartment buildings in the middle of San Francisco, they need our information too.
Yeah.
They're probably gardening with something on their back patio. It's pretty likely. And so we really can touch so many different people and affect so much. We can affect natural resources, the amount of water that they're using.
Oh, yeah.
But gardening also for me is, it's therapeutic. You've probably heard the term therapeutic horticulture.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So just getting people outside, getting them to appreciate the natural environment, that's really what drives me. And I'm so grateful and blessed that I can do that through the UC Master Gardener program and the amazing volunteers.
Wow, how incredible is that? Good for you. Thank you. So I am all about education, and I have to know, is there one book that has been influential for you in this process in your life?
There's so many books that are influential to me. My goodness. It's going to be hard to pick one, but if I had to pick one, it's actually not a gardening book. It's a book on, getting to know yourself and actually leadership. It's called Now Discover Your Strengths by Marcus Buckingham. And it was a really profound book for me because I read it. It's, kind of like Myers-Briggs. I'm sure you've taken that.
Oh, yes, multiple times.
Yeah. So Now Discover Your Strengths helps you identify your top 5 strengths. The book, it's not about strengths versus weaknesses. It's just what your top 5 strengths are. And my top strength happens to be something called maximizer. And if you read the book, you can learn all about what a maximizer is. But what has been impactful to me from this book is how myself as a maximizer, how that trickles into my daily work, my family life, how it trickles into how I am as a gardener, why I picked 8 varieties of zucchini. Right. So that's been very influential to me to really help me see how I just tend to operate, and then also reflect back, but kind of before I react to something, reflect on how I could act differently outside of my norm that maybe would make me more successful.
I just pulled it up on Amazon. It's called Now Discover Your Strengths. It's by Donald Clifton and Sally Woodbridge. And this book looks familiar. I may have this on my bookshelf, actually.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I don't know if you want to do this on the record, but my copy is by Marcus Buckingham and Donald Clifton.
Oh, interesting.
I know. Oh. So we've got 2 different authors here. I'm not sure what's going on.
Well, Donald Clifton is the same in both cases.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, there you go. Maybe it's an updated version or something. Perfect. So, what one final piece of advice do you have for our listeners?
Oh, one final piece of advice. Your listeners are gardeners. They're urban farmers. Maybe they're people who are interested in getting out there and trying to garden too. My one piece of advice, looking at the world today, I'm definitely a half glass full type of person, but I can't ignore the fact that so few of our youth are connected to agriculture anymore.
Yeah.
And, I can say that my grandfather was a farmer in the central United States, and he had a big impact on me. But who's going to have that impact on my daughter, and who's going to have that impact on the kids in my neighborhood? And so my one piece of advice would be to share your passion and to share your successes and your failures, and not be afraid to really talk about it and show it off to the people around you, because you never know when you're going to make an impact on someone who maybe otherwise would not be exposed to gardening. As shocking as that sounds, there are people who don't become exposed to gardening, and we need to be an inspiration to others just by showing them how happy it makes us, or what we were able to accomplish, or what we learned from what we didn't accomplish.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for joining us on the show and sharing your experience with us today, Missy. It's been a treat getting to chat with you.
Well, it's really my pleasure. I'm grateful for the time with you, and I do hope anyone who's listening, if they're interested in the Master Gardener program and you're not in the state of California, go ahead and do a Google search for Master Gardener and your state. And I hope you will be successful with that endeavor. And if you are a listener in the state of California, please come find us. You can visit our website at mg.ucanr.edu.
Perfect. And I have to tell you, when I read your bio earlier, before we started, it was like, oh, wow. I get a master gardener on the program. I think you're our first master gardener.
Oh, I hope you have many more.
Oh, yes.
I really hope you do, and from different states. What's exciting about the program is how unique it is based on, what the communities and the clients are needing. And so in California, certainly we talk a lot about the drought. I'd be really jazzed to hear what someone in Arizona, what a master gardener in Arizona is talking to their public about.
Well, I'm going to throw it out here. All you master gardeners out there, if you would like to be on the show, podcast at urbanfarm.org, and we'd love to chat with you.
Excellent.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast. Decades ago, I started growing food in my front and backyard, and I realized that my mission in life is to inspire and empower others to grow their own nutrient-dense, healthy organic food. Because of this, a lot of people have come to me with their gardening questions over the years, and that got me thinking, what if we put together a community that would help budding gardeners blossom? So I finally made the idea a reality with my Urban Farm U member program. Each month, your membership includes 3 live online events, a monthly class, a chit-chat with an expert, and a monthly coaching session, plus access to the experts on our member page and a significant discount on our signature courses. I'm deeply committed to transforming our global food system, and I do this by empowering you to grow your own food. The Urban Farm membership program is a simple way to get going. Please join me in transforming your food system today. To learn more, go to urbanfarmmembership.org or text membership to 33444. That's urbanfarmmembership.org or text membership to 33444.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.